we have these crossroads. And you know, either way you choose, your life is going to be different.
The universe doesn't exist, but God thinks it does.
We have to stop consuming our culture. We have to create culture.
Stupidity has a definite evolutionary function. I am all for abolishing stupidity, but before it goes, we should pay tribute to it.
Howdy and welcome to the Nonsense Bazaar. We're your hosts. I'm Willow Truman.
I'm Sequoia Kennedy.
And today we're doing a very dreamy episode.
Excellent.
Yes. I feel comfortable assuming that probably everyone listening is familiar with shock therapy.
Every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we provide. No, you're imagining it now. Maybe you saw it in a movie, one like A Beautiful Mind or Return to Oz. In your mind's eye, there's a person strapped to a table with electrodes attached to their head, maybe some drool coming out of their mouth.
Fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that's not an inaccurate image. And controversial as it may be, it is a method of treatment still utilized today for patients whose mental disorders are treatment resistant. But where did it originate? I'm so glad I asked myself that question so I could guide us into what today's topic is.
Does that imply that shock therapy is not a treatment?
Oh, it is.
Because it's treatment resistant.
Well, it's given to people who everything else has failed.
Yeah, no, I was just making a joke about it not really being a treatment, but actually just putting fucking electricity into your brain.
No, really, that's the controversial part.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that really doing? We're going to be going over...
Right now, for example, I feel like it might be able to fix me.
Yes.
Just like 1,000,000 volts right to the dome.
Well, that's the problem. It'll get rid of your bad memories, but it'll get rid of your good memories too.
Yeah, fuck it.
Like, you might not know who your mom is.
Oh, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I know.
That really is like a monkey's paw situation.
It is. We're going to be going over some case studies contained in a book called Oneirophrenia by Ladislas J. Meduna, a Hungarian neurologist and the pioneer of convulsive therapy.
Of course his fucking name was Ladislas.
Yes. So even though he's the pioneer of convulsive therapy or shock therapy, one could argue that its roots stretch back even further to Luigi Galvani's, experiments on frogs back in the late 1700s.
I don't know.
Oh, well, now you know. That's not what we're here to talk about.
I'll look that up in my own time.
Oneirophrenia was published by the University of Illinois Press in 1950, and while you can still find a copy to purchase easily enough, it remains a rather obscure book in that oneirophrenia simply isn't talked about much these days. It never cemented itself in the DSM as an official disorder, but essentially what it is a state where a person is confused about whether they're in reality or whether they're in a dream. They don't know the distinction anymore. It's very blurry. And if you've ever been there, you know that it's not fun to stay too long.
I think I've been there my whole life.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest. I'm never quite sure.
Am I awake or asleep right now?
Does it matter? Is that a useful question is what I always come back to. Mm-hmm.
Well, many of the individuals mentioned in this book, straight up got trapped in that place for too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds to me kind of like being on a perma trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I enjoyed this book. I found it compelling for the same reason that I enjoy reading psychedelic trip reports.
Yeah.
The experiences of these patients reminded me a lot of what people endure under the influence of Datura, LSD. And it was also interesting to learn about how Ladislas Meduna attempted to treat these patients with what at the time were newfangled methods. And in some cases, the treatments were successes. But they also accidentally discovered how to eternal sunshine of the spotless mind people.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm very eager to get into this book. But first,
I'm
let's
interested.
do what we do. Pull a tarot card.
Let's.
I pulled the Four of Cups.
I fucking hate that card. I think of all the cards in the deck.
It's a very cheeky card. It feels like it's calling me out.
When that, yeah. But when that one comes up, it's just it's always so fucking accurate, and it's just not a good time. It's not as shockingly bad as a 10 swords or even a 5 swords,
Yeah.
It's not an 8 of cups. It's not It's not 5 of cups. All those aren't so consistent, though. 4 of cups always sucks every fucking time.
Right.
I got beef with that, Gart.
I have theories about how it factors into this episode, but I'll save it until the end, because that's when we talk about it.
You're not that confident, though, are you?
I'm kind of confident.
Because
To me, it represents how medicine deals with psychological ailments.
see. I was thinking of the 4s are about like a structure, like walls. It's a number you can't make a magic square out of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like someone not wanting to be woken up.
Yeah.
Which is a very cups thing. Like dreams are a very cups thing.
Water.
It's like they're just in there and you could wake them the fuck up, but it's just not happening.
Right.
Maybe I'll cut this now, but that's what the 4 of cups makes me think of.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
Dream, 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 dream. Dream, dream, dream when I want you in my arms, when I want you and all your charms whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream. Dream, dream, dream when I feel blue in the night and I need you to hold me tight whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream.
All right, so let's learn a little bit about the author of this book. Okay, first of all, there's a legitimate practice in medicine of using one disease to treat another disease. For example, the discovery of malarial therapy for neurosyphilis. From the 1920s until the 1950s, before the introduction of penicillin, malaria-induced fevers would be used as a treatment for neurosyphilis because the fevers would kill the bacteria that were causing the infection.
It's hardcore.
Yeah. Glad we found something better than that.
Although at the time, I'm glad they figured that out.
Yeah.
It's fucking hard.
Stepping stones.
Yeah. Just cook it out of them.
Right. Now, what if you could use epilepsy to treat schizophrenia?
I don't think the mechanics are the same.
Well, in 1934, that's exactly the idea that this Hungarian dude, Ladislas J. Meduna, had after looking at some dead people's brains and noticing that there were greater neuroglia concentrations on brain sections from patients who had had epilepsy compared to patients who had schizophrenia who had a distinct lack of glia. What is glia?
Yeah.
They're cells found in the central nervous system, like in the brain and spinal cord. They don't produce electrical impulses, but they make up a lot of your neural tissue.
Do they receive electrical? Are they like
I'm not
receivers?
sure.
Yeah, okay.
They maintain homeostasis, form myelin, and provide support and protection for neurons.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're like a supporter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't know what accounts for that discrepancy, but based on these glia findings, Meduna thought that schizophrenia and epilepsy must be opposite conditions, and therefore a little bit of epilepsy might be good for the schizophrenic. Maybe the lack of glia is what was causing their neurological impairments. Maybe they just needed some more of that nice supportive connecting cells. I don't know.
I mean, you know what? We
I
still
can see the logic.
Yeah, I do too. Like, we still don't know what the fuck a schizophrenia is.
No,
you know?
they don't know what's
so,
going on.
I get it.
Yeah. So how do you go about that? How do you make someone epileptic? Well, a few medication-induced seizures and perhaps the patient would be good as new. It was worth a shot.
Was it?
Literally, he began injecting patients.
God damn it.
Shooting them up with camphor.
That is what I would expect from someone named Ladislas. Does that make me a racist?
That's anti-Hungarian.
But you know what I'm saying, though.
No, I do. There's a type. There's a type to these mad scientists.
There is.
So who is this dude? Where'd he come from? What's his background? Well, Meduna was born in Budapest, Hungary on March 27th, 1896 to Francis and Gisela Meduna. I love the name Gisela. I've used it in many Crusader Kings campaign, but not spelled the same way. He grew up in relative middle-class comfort during the waning years of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
I feel like Gisela just means jizz girl.
Yeah. Basically. In 1914, he began studies at the Royal University of Science in Budapest, but left a year later to serve in the army of the Austro-Hungarian Empire as World War I was happening.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, he then served on the Italian front, and then went back to his studies at the war's end in 1918. 3 years later, he got his medical degree, and he began specialty training in neurology. Then he accepted a teaching position at the Budapest Inter-Academic Institute for Brain Research. So he's doing he's looking at people's brains and stuff.
So he saw a bunch of horror.
Yeah.
True horror.
True horror.
And then went to look at a bunch of people's brains.
Why are we like this?
Yeah.
Why do we do the things we do?
Yeah.
What horrors lurk within the mind of man?
Yeah, like literally.
Yeah, he began researching disorders of the pineal gland.
God damn it.
We just talked about that last week.
Well, it is a mysterious gland.
So that's the endocrine gland that, it plays a role in human sexual development at puberty. And it also produces melatonin, helps us regulate our sleep patterns.
Yeah. As we mentioned last week, it's funny that it comes up again.
Yeah.
But we are talking about the brain.
And if you want better sleep, you know what helps produce melatonin? Darkness.
Yeah.
Darkness produces melatonin.
Yeah.
In 1927, he began a new position as associate professor at the University of Budapest Clinic for Mental and Nervous Diseases. He became intrigued by this idea of clinical psychology because remember, this is a time when that was an emergent field.
Right, yeah.
The idea of studying the mind and the brain was all kind of new.
Being able to get into the brain and tweak it.
Right.
Clinical aspect of psychology. Yeah, that's super new.
So he begins sitting in on autopsies conducted on recently deceased clinic patients, and that's how he discovers the whole glia thing, is looking at these brains.
Yeah. That's how I thought he did it.
Yeah. That's the most interesting game of spot the differences ever. In highlights magazines.
Yeah.
Kids, they have find the differences. But just doing that with
two dead people.
Yeah. And taking little bits of their brain and putting it under a microscope.
Whoa.
Being all right, let's see. This one's got a lot less of those little spidery looking things in it.
There's two different kinds of crazy.
Yeah.
Let's see what that looks like.
All right. Meduna conducted his first experiments in inducing seizures on animals before people, as scientists are prone to do. And he used camphor dissolved in oil. What is camphor? Camphor is a chemical that can be made from the bark and wood of the camphor tree.
Yeah.
Or from turpentine oil.
Okay, yeah.
It can be used to treat cough, pain, and itching, but it is unsafe when taken by mouth or skin.
Yeah.
It looks kind of like little sugar cubes or something. All right, it's got a musty aroma, a penetrating musty aroma. That's my favorite type.
Yeah, I think it was used in original fixed vapor rub and shit. Or had a similar function.
So he's injecting that in animals. Just wants to see if it works.
Yeah.
Can this induce a seizure and will they live after? Yeah.
It'll do something.
Okay, cool. He injects his first human patient on January 23rd, 1934. Sick. Yes.
Awesome.
This takes place at Budapest State Hospital. The 33-year-old male patient had been at the institution for 3 years after he had began to hear voices that he claimed came from inside of his ears as well as his stomach.
So we just inject him with camphor?
He was there for 3 years.
To make him have seizures?
If your stomach doesn't stop talking to you for 3 years, you're getting the camphor.
I don't think that's that bad, though.
I don't know.
That doesn't sound that bad.
He also believed, oh my God, this is fucking crazy. When he was out in public, he believed that people were waving at him. I do that. If somebody's waving or
yeah, dude, you wave back, you realize you don't know them and you feel like such a fucking dumbass.
I don't know why they're waving at me, but maybe I just don't recognize them.
I mean, it sounds like maybe he was coming home and being everyone's waving at me. But even still,
I need more details.
It's not
'Cause
the worst
that-
delusion I've ever heard of.
Right. If that's just in the file as like why he's crazy, that's not enough.
Why we need to give him seizures?
Right.
Yeah, that's.
So this
It would
is
have
why
killed me.
this is why he needed the Caesars.
Okay.
He spent all all of 1933 in his bed under the covers.
Okay. Yeah.
Totally
Maybe.
catatonic. Just
Maybe
did
we
not-
gotta wake him up a bit.
Yeah.
Shake him loose.
No, it's true. So Meduna's like, well, he's not moving anyway. He doesn't really seem, he's not moving. He's not talking. Let's do it. Inject him. And then they do this 6 times over 18 days. And what do you know? On the morning of February 10th, the patient spontaneously arose from bed, was lively, spoke, and asked for something to eat.
This worked.
He was interested in everything going on around him, asked about his illness, and realized that he had been sick. He asked how long he'd been in the hospital, and we told him that he'd been there for 4 years. He couldn't believe it.
It worked.
It worked. They zapped him out of it.
I'm so pissed. I'm so upset that worked.
Like I said, it's a crapshoot. Sometimes it works, sometimes it eternal sunshine of the spotless mind.
Yeah, but like now I'm tempted to go fucking lick a car battery.
Well, just wait on that.
Okay.
Following the treatment with camphor, the man actually escaped from the Budapest State Hospital and returned home to find that the cousin who had been living with his wife was actually not related to her at all. Not her cousin, her lover. He beats up this cousin, kicks him out of the house, and then proceeds to beat up his wife, telling her that he would rather be at the state mental hospital where at least there was peace and honesty.
Well, that's not good.
No.
That's not good at all.
It makes you wonder, what drove this man crazy to begin with?
Maybe he was an asshole in the first place.
It's true.
But like, you know, I mean, I imagine it's a shock. Like you realize you've been in a
You
hospital.
got a liar of a wife, though.
He doesn't though, but like I imagine he's woken up like it feels like a nap to him.
It's true.
Do you know what I mean? And his wife's fucking some other dude.
Okay,
in
so
her mind, she's moved on.
I know, he's been gone for 3 years.
Yeah.
So imagine like your husband's gone for 3 years. You think that he's totally lost it. And then all of a sudden, like, they inject him with some shit.
He just shows up one day and beats up your boyfriend.
Yeah. And he's like, honey, I'm home. Who the fuck is this? Oh, it's my cousin. You know, like, jeez,
Wow.
I can see it. I can see how that was a messy situation. Nobody won there.
Physical violence is never justified.
No.
That's the part I have problem with, but I understand how the situation spun out of control.
Yeah.
I'm not going to place blame on anybody, but you don't go around hitting people.
Nope.
That's my judgment on it.
I mean, what did he expect? It had been years.
He intellectually knew that, but he didn't feel that.
No,
you know what I mean?
Thing. He was gone for those years. But okay, so the fact that they had just gotten this man out of catatonia itself, this like state of basically like you're a robot that's been shut off.
Yeah.
You know, people will hold themselves in odd positions.
That's so crazy.
Just for hours and hours on end, just looking at the wall or just like
I actually
nothing.
like honestly though, the idea of just shaking it loose makes sense.
Yeah, just a little brain zap.
Because
You're
like
all right,
if it's like
wake it up.
If it's this loop that's just gotten
It's
caught,
like
right?
when your computer is malfunctioning and you're like, oh, I should just turn it off and then back on again.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, because it's stuck in a glitch, a loop.
Right. So this exit from a catatonic state had only occurred through 2 other forms of treatments, like in the past. So this whole idea of injecting people with medications to make them functionally have an overdose and seizure was kind of new, but it was better than what had come before it. Before that, there was insulin coma therapy, which is where
that shit, no good.
Not at all. That's where schizophrenics were given high doses of insulin to produce convulsions and then a state of coma. And that was pioneered in Vienna, Austria by Dr. Manfred Sackel.
Okay, so there's a real good reason I have like beef with Hungarian names.
With an association with that part of the world with this stuff.
Yeah. It's where it comes from.
Right. Insulin coma therapy is hardcore.
Yeah, man.
It's really fucking scary and unpleasant.
That's what happened to Townes Van Sant.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he was, I think.
Also John Nash.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. But Towns, I mean, he was, if you don't know Towns Van Zandt.
I do.
I know you do.
Yeah.
The listener, if you don't know Towns Van Zandt, he was one of the greatest songwriters of all time. Just top fucking songwriters of all fucking time. Outlaw country dude from mostly it was 70s to 90s. That's when he was active, and it'll break your heart. It's some of the best shit ever. Anyway, I believe it was depression that he was given insulin shock therapy for, and it gave him permanent brain damage. Mm-hmm. And the only piece he could find from that was alcohol, and that's what led to his death.
Yeah.
And it was like 50s and shit. It's a really tragic story.
In an indirect way, I would say that shock therapy also contributed to Hemingway's death because he lost his ability to write.
Did he?
Yeah.
No shit.
Like, it really messes with you as a person. Once you start to like lose your memories, like say you had just gone to college for like 2 years, spent a bunch of money on your tuition, and then you end up in the psych ward and get some shock therapy. Goodbye college. It's functionally like you didn't even go.
Yeah.
You know?
That's crazy, man. I mean, I'm sure they have different ways of doing it now. I'm sure like electroconvulsive therapy is
still a crapshoot.
Really?
There are a lot of risks involved, but now there's informed consent where like people actually have like the choice if they
should just take some fucking mushrooms. Holy shit. What are you doing?
No, for real though.
It'll shake you. Like you can shake yourself in other ways. Yes, there's risks. Lower though. Mm-hmm. A lot lower.
Now, before there was insulin coma therapy, there was something called sleep therapy, where patients were just given heavy doses of barbiturates for up to 9 days in a row. Of course, that came with risks of death from circulatory collapse, so that was done away with. So yeah, oddly enough, this whole camphor injection thing was a step up from what they were doing. Still not great. Now, the camphor technique was proven to be effective, but also inefficient because the seizures would take up to an hour to begin, during which time the patients would feel a profound sense of terror leading up to the seizure.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. However, Meduna believed that it was perhaps this fear and terror and like near-death experience that would lead to the spontaneous recovery of the patient. But again, not very nice to do, took a long time. And also after patients had been through one treatment, it was hard to get them back for their second treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have to be forcibly held down. Not great. So in an attempt to make things slightly better, he switched from camphor to metrazole, which is sold under the brand name Cargazole in Europe at the time as a circulatory and respiratory stimulant. It had some benefits over camphor, whose intramuscular injections were painful and would sometimes even induce vomiting, during the 45 minutes to an hour of impending doom and terror that led up to this inevitable seizure.
Yeah.
Yeah, not great. Metrazole had similar disadvantages too because it too would cause extreme distress for patients before they lost consciousness. And treatments were also described as being stressful for the professionals having to perform them. So it's stressful for the patients and for the people having to do it.
Yeah, because they're not making the rules.
Yeah, aversion to second doses were so strong that patients often would have to be restrained by force, like I said. And another drawback to metrazole was that the convulsions couldn't be halted in any way. So once they were going, they were going. During insulin coma therapy, there was at least this saline solution that could be given to reverse the shock. Therefore, there wouldn't be these violent convulsions. But during the metrazole seizures, sometimes people would have spinal fractures because seizures are intense. They're literally having seizures, and nobody thought to start strapping these patients down until 5 years after they started doing this.
Now, I don't just make sure I don't get misconstrued for trying to break my own back in feigning disgust for this. So let me just be very clear. First against the fucking wall.
Yeah.
I would like to kill the people.
But it's in the name of science. They're trying to help people.
First against the fucking wall. Fuck you.
I know.
It's just awful.
Yep. Metrazole, by the way, would end up being banned totally in 1982. But of course, its use as a shock treatment was discontinued far before that. In the late 1930s, there was a team of Italian physicians led by Ugo Cerletti and Lucio Bini, who sought to derive a method of electrical seizure induction that would have a quicker onset and less side effects. And Of course, they began by testing on dogs.
God damn.
A little bit of animal experimentation in the name of science. You just gotta do it. You gotta do it. First you do dogs, then you do schizophrenics, then you do prisoners, and then you roll it out on poor people.
Headshots are too good for these fucks.
Well, you know, there's a natural sequence to things.
I'm gonna bury them up to their heads in anthills.
Yeah, just make sure you're not one of those 4.
Why dogs? They don't even share, like, it's not a similar fucking mammalian brain to ours.
I know.
What the fuck?
You know what they were doing to these dogs too? They would put one electrode in the mouth and another up their ass. But they found out that this would just give the dogs heart attacks. So they were like, oh, maybe we should just put the electrodes on their brain.
Are they just trying to kill dogs?
Like, yeah, maybe you should put it on the area that you're trying to affect.
Yeah.
Why are you putting it up their butt?
That's so fucking...
I'm at least glad that they did that on dogs before they tried it on a human. You know?
Ah, fuck that. Dogs are better
Nobody's
people.
putting an electrode up my butt.
Dogs are better people
Not without my consent.
than people. Yeah, I mean, they shouldn't... I don't want them to do that either, but, like, I'd rather... I don't know. Like, if I had to choose,
Yes.
man, give it to the human. Higher chance the human is sinned.
Right.
than
So
the dog.
these Italian like dog testers.
God damn it.
In 1938, they conduct their first human trial on this 39-year-old dude who had been found wandering in a train station in Rome. They're like, oh, this guy's schizophrenic. Let's bring him on in. And they give him an application of 110 volts of alternating currents for 0.2 seconds. And they successfully induce a seizure. Yay! Now, they administer 10 more treatments over the course of this patient's hospitalization. And it's a success. He goes back home to his wife and it goes back to his job and, oh, he's normal again. He's a functional member of society. Just needed to be zapped a few times.
Yeah, he's getting his work done again.
Yeah, now go back and be a robot again.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Now, news about this technique spread rapidly through Europe and North America.
What was this, 1938 Italy?
It didn't come to America until 1940.
That's just such a fascist ass thing to do, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is just...
You found a crazy in the train station, bring him on in.
Like, listen, if you know, the words get fucked up these days, like, you know, it's like, yeah, you call people fascists too often, calling the wrong people fascists, whatever. The reason we don't like fascists is because that's a fascist ass thing that was pioneered in 1930s Italy. That's a fascist ass thing to do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this technique would explode in popularity because it was found to be more effective than what they had so far for treating a variety of neurological and psychiatric conditions, mostly depression. But they also used it to treat psoriasis and ulcers because people were confused about ulcers back then.
Hold up. They used electroshocks to treat ulcers?
Yeah. People thought that
What?
ulcers were like caused by stress and like thinking.
Well, like they are, but
Are they though?
that's what I've always heard. But it's like an
They're a bacterial infection.
They can be.
Yeah.
But like stress doesn't help.
No.
I think stress does
that's
actually. I think stress does actually cause ulcers, but it's just like a acidic wearing away of the lining in your.
Well, you're going to need to get zapped for that.
Why?
They didn't know what the fuck they were doing, and we still don't.
I guess they thought stress was just confined to the brain,
Yeah.
or like didn't. Yeah.
So the 1970s is about like when the whole anti-psychiatry movement starts to take form.
I'm starting to understand why.
Shock therapy falls out of favor with the general public, but like I said, it's still around today because for some people, it's a miracle cure. Remember, this is reserved for cases where nothing else has worked. Nowadays, that's what it is reserved for.
Right.
So we're talking about people with like severe treatment-resistant depression who have nothing left to lose and would probably end up either institutionalized for the rest of their life because they can't do anything because they're so depressed, or killing themselves. So it's like, sure, I guess shock me. Let's see what happens.
Like I understand the impulse.
Right.
Yeah.
And for some people, that works out great. For other people, it doesn't. I want to listen to some negative testimonials of shock therapy and then some positive ones.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go into the case studies in the book.
Yeah.
But I just wanted us to have a basis for like what induction of seizures like does to people.
No, I think that's it's a good thing to see.
All right. Yeah. So let's listen to some negative testimonials.
It wasn't until I was at Shoal Creek that I saw a psychiatrist. And little did I know, after I signed myself in freely, that I couldn't leave for 72 hours. I wouldn't leave my room. I couldn't be around other people. I was terrified, and every time I went for another treatment of ECT, I got more and more paranoid. My head was exploding for days. I couldn't do anything but fall on the bed and sleep for 16 hours or something. I'd have to write everything down and then remember where I wrote it. My family would tell me, look at your book. Look at your book. I had to carry this book around with me all the time. My first service dog I got because if I left the apartment to go check the mail, I would get lost. I couldn't remember the number of the apartment. I'd just wander around. When I applied for disability, I had to go to the office and take some kind of test. I couldn't tell them my name. I couldn't tell them where I lived. I couldn't tell them how to get to my house. I couldn't tell them the president. I couldn't tell them anything. And my older sister told me that they asked her, is she like this all the time? And she said, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
Yeah. And of course, if you were forcibly given shock therapy, no fucking shit, your like psychosis symptoms would get worse. And if they weren't present before, they might become present.
Yeah. God damn.
Right. So that's just one. But like I said, we're going to balance this out with positive ones too, because there's varied experiences when it comes to ECT.
Do we want the negative one? The second negative one?
Yeah. Or should we go negative, positive, negative, positive?
I think we should go double negative and then.
Okay.
I'll just swap it around. Like the talking versus the...
I have side effects of ECT. I am currently suffering from severe memory loss. I don't remember anything that happened in January or in February. I remember most of March, but apparently while I was in the hospital, I had tons and tons and tons of people visiting me in the hospital, and I had a bunch of different roommates, and I don't remember, you know, I don't remember seeing them during the month of March. While I was in the hospital, I didn't have a roommate. I was isolated because my nurses, you know, decided to isolate me and you know, keep me, you know, alone and on a one-to-one.
Yeah. So yeah, just wiped out like 2 months of her memory.
That's insane.
Right?
Oh, that's awful.
Now let's listen to some positive testimonials. As if this is like a product that you're going to buy.
Yeah, right.
ECT definitely saved my life. I was depressed. There were times where I was
This feels like propaganda.
It was only a matter of time before I acted on the suicidal thoughts I was having. We had tried so many different types of therapy, so many different types of medications. It's always like, take this for 6 weeks and then we'll see if it's having an effect. You don't want to wait 6 weeks. Going through ECT, it's like living colorblind.
What?
And suddenly you can see colors. Because of all the movies I had seen,
This is propaganda.
Yes.
Paddles, right?
Wow.
Life before ECT was like living in black and white.
That's insane.
Now
dude.
I'm in the land of Oz and everything is Technicolor.
It's from Hackensack Meridian Health. Like they're trying to sell their services.
I know. Well, and it's funny. She brings up a point, which is a great point. The thing about psychiatric treatment that sucks is that when you're given these pills, yeah, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks to feel a difference. And in the interim, you're checking yourself for, am I experiencing side effects? How is this impacting my sleep? How is this impacting my mood? Like you're constantly self-monitoring.
You know what?
And oftentimes it doesn't even help. And then you have to hop to the next one. So it's like there's another month of your life that's been stolen to depression. So you're like, fuck it, whatever. Put the paddles on my head.
I'm not gonna say that, you know, mushrooms are a miracle cure or anything.
They certainly help, though.
But what I'm going to say is maybe there should be, since all these other fucking treatments, including SSRIs, you know, have some pretty bad chances of side effects too.
All have risks.
Perhaps mushrooms should be the first line treatment. Maybe we try that first, and if that doesn't work, we can move to more damaging things with higher risks of adverse effects. Maybe just eat some fucking mushrooms first.
Yes. All right.
When
the next positive testimony.
When we get to a place where that's a reasonable thing to say, that's when I'll know we're going to be all right.
Uh-huh.
My name's Rich, and I've battled depression.
It's going to do the same thing, isn't it?
I was still able to succeed in the things that I pursued, having worked for a global company and traveled the world for them. At the time I had my depression in 2019, the month before that, I was awarded the Field Service Engineer of the Year.
He was overworked, the stress kept him from sleeping, and sleep deprivation caught up with him. And once you mix sleep deprivation with someone who is prone to depression, you're going to get a situation that's exactly what we got. He had a full nervous breakdown. We went to see our psychiatrist, tried a lot of different drugs, it didn't work, and finally he said, you know what, I think he should try ECT at Medical City Green Oaks. He was terrified.
Son of a bitch.
They're
I was
just
terrified.
both just
But he
commercials
was
for
so
these,
sick.
like...
He was pretty much doing what anybody told him to.
Yeah.
Go here and go here.
Son of a bitch, dude. Are you kidding
No, like,
me?
I'm so glad that I worked for these people, but also...
Did it? Fucking did it?
I mean,
That dude
they've
was
been
just
zapped
sad.
into believing it.
That dude was just sad. Now he talks weird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know if it worked.
No.
I think maybe that dude should have eaten some fucking mushrooms and gone into the woods. You know what I'm saying?
And that might have helped.
It might have worked.
All right, now we're going to get into some case studies, finally. Now, as per this book and Meduna's definitions, there are two types of oneirophrenia. There is simple oneirophrenia, which this is where the afflicted is such that it still permits the patient to recognize the pathological nature of the process, even though the central representations of mediators of the extra-receptors are more affected than those of the proprietor receptors. This means, so he's not projecting his disturbance onto the outside world. He recognizes that the change has been within himself, not the outside world, that there's something wrong with him.
Yeah.
And then there's delirioid oneirophrenia, which is where it's more cloudy. The patients project their troubles onto the outside world, experiencing it as if everything is a staged, unreal product or like a fantastic dream or a terrifying nightmare, and it's external. So it's whether or not the patient recognizes that it's internal or they've completely lost the boundary and they now believe that they are in a dream. So case number 1 is of MK. This is an 18-year-old boy, one of several children, an honor student and athlete who had just graduated from high school. Now, this is like a prime time in somebody's life to experience abnormalities, like the first time away from home. That's when I had my first manic episode. I didn't sleep for like 3 weeks when I left home because I was like, oh my God, freedom. my brain just went into overdrive with all this freedom.
Hormonal changes and shit, those just like also provide fertile ground for that. If it's gonna happen.
Nobody's giving me a bedtime anymore. Nobody's watching over my shoulder. I can do what I want. It can really, lead you to some weird places.
For sure.
Without any visible cause, MK became nervous at the end of January 1944 and seemed to have some difficulty in concentration. But these symptoms were so feeble the patient's family did not notice them at all. On January 30th, the patient failed to understand his father's instructions about the family car and left it somewhere, but could not remember whether he had put it in the garage or left it on the street. The next day, he was undecided, hesitant in action, and irritable. That evening, he left for a dance. His mother was apprehensive because she had noticed signs of increased nervousness in her son. She attributed this to going to his first formal dance. He returned at 9 a.m. in a confusional state. As to what had happened during the night before, his mother thought he was drunk. She put him to bed and called his girlfriend and a schoolmate and asked her about the events of the night. The girl reported that although the boy did not drink anything, she also thought that he had seemed drunk and acted so strangely that she did not leave his side for a moment. From this day on, the patient became talkative. Day and night, he would talk continuously and confusedly, and his family could not understand what he said. He was apprehensive and fearful and hid when people came to the house lest they were there to kill him. He was afraid FBI agents would get him, but he could not tell why he thought so. On the fourth day, the patient had already become so withdrawn and had rapidly begun to develop catatonic symptoms. On the fifth day, he appeared so engrossed in his thoughts that a logical conversation could not be carried on. He showed a tendency to refuse food. On the sixth day, the patient was admitted to the psychiatric ward of a private hospital where he soon became mute.
Maybe he's just having a fucking bad week, dude. What the fuck?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
He thought people were coming to kill him, though. I mean, but, like, been there.
Who's writing the book about him? Do you know what He was being fucked with.
What led up to this, though, I wonder? Like, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Was it he just graduated from high school? What was his next move? Like, was he going off to join the army? Like, what?
Dog, you got his heart broken. Come on now. We know what happened.
Yeah, it was a bad night at the dance. I don't know.
We know what happened. Yeah.
All the usual laboratory tests of blood and spinal fluid gave normal results.
He's having a bad week.
No. They gave him some electric shock treatment, which slowly removed the catatonic symptoms. The patient's mutism disappeared. His confusion broke to the surface. He thought his father had lost his legs, that he had landmines or hand grenades in his pockets.
This doesn't sound like an improvement.
Consequently, he began carrying his hands fearfully, thinking that within them was held a grenade. For 5 weeks, he failed to recognize who his parents were. 20 electric shock treatments cured his catatonic symptoms, which dissolved, and then his confusion was gone. Okay. 2 days later, we did not find any clouding of consciousness, but then 18 days after recovery, the patient relapsed again. During this phase, his mutism came back. His ideas were unavailable, and his facial expression was frightened.
He's been through some shit.
Yeah.
This dude's had a bad couple weeks.
My God.
What do you expect from this dude, man?
He started to recover like a month later, and then he was in excellent condition, reportedly. There's also a through line through this book where they measure the patient's blood sugar when they're in a psychotic state versus when they're feeling more normal, and they notice that there's like a difference.
Basis for like the insulin shock shit.
Right.
Yeah.
So the patient recovers and explains that while he was sick, there were times where even though he was like in the hospital, he thought that he was in London, and he thought that like sounds or like noises from the street were the sounds of like battle going on outside. Other times he thought that he was inside of a prison camp. Other times he thought he was inside a German submarine and that the doctors were actually like German officers.
Look, he's not like, he's poetically correct.
Yes. That's the thing about psychosis is that I remember reading one case, not in this book, but about a woman who had experienced like extreme childhood neglect and felt like her siblings were always paid more attention over her. So when she had her psychotic break, she started acting like a baby. And it was and her parents like had to baby her during that time and give her this care and attention that she like had so desperately craved. Yeah. So it was like her psychosis, while she was like, you know, crazy, like, oh, she's acting like a baby. It was because there was some part of her that needed to express itself that had like been dormant for so long and just could not be ignored any longer.
How about maybe mushrooms shouldn't even be the first line of treatment? Maybe like understanding that like poetry is an important part of the world and that like humans are fucking weird and that like we all do weird shit and maybe we should just like fucking listen to each other before, you know, juicing them up and shit. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe that should be the first line.
Yeah. And this idea that like, so when he had this hand grenade in his hand, he really felt it. But he also described that he couldn't see it, which made him even more freaked out because he could feel it in his hand. Like he knew that this grenade was there, but he couldn't see it. And to me, the grenade is almost like, what does that represent?
No, it's a manifestation of force.
Yeah, of like an explosion, of destruction, of like he knows that he holds within his hand the power to like, he's basically destroying his family, his reality, his life as he knows it.
I might not even take it towards destruction. I think it's a poetic representation of force.
Yeah.
Of the ability to create.
Mm-hmm. There were times where he thought that he was guilty for killing the president of the United States.
Well, that part's true.
Yeah. He had never even seen the president, and he knew intrinsically that it couldn't be true, but he carried within him like this guilt that he must be responsible for like doing these horrible things.
I don't have a clever workaround for that one.
No. There was also other times where he would unbutton his pants and look at his penis, and he would see that it was there, but he didn't feel it. Like his eyes would tell him, I have a dick. But if he tried to like touch it or looked away from it, it was like the knowledge that he had a penis was gone. It was like he didn't have a penis.
I mean, I'm not thinking about it all day.
He said this was the worst nightmare a man could ever have. He felt he had lost his legs, his genitalia, and then he also at some point completely lost his own orientation to space. So it was like, even though he could see his body and understand that it existed, he had no connection to it. Like disassociation.
Yeah.
Except I don't know if there was really a word or a term for that back when this book was published.
I also I don't like the idea of just of putting frameworks around things while conscious experience is a very fluid and changing process.
Yeah.
And also like with poetry being a key part of the conscious experience.
Right.
Do you know what I mean by that? Like, it's, yeah.
It is all very poetic.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, it's like emotionally, electrically charged poetry in that, like, it's this view of the world that, like, you know, as an artist, like, that's the demon I'm exercising when I'm making art and shit.
Absolutely.
Right. And then that shit needs to come out.
Yeah.
You gotta walk the dog, dude. You gotta walk the fucking dog.
Well, that's an outlet that I think a lot of people, especially around this time, didn't have. I noticed that there were a few cases in this book that were first-time mothers.
Yeah, there you
who
go.
started experiencing symptoms shortly after childbirth. And it's like, I don't really think that postpartum psychosis was understood at this time, but of course, it only makes sense that a first-time mother
huge chemical changes, huge life changes. Just, you know, that's some shit you need a support structure around you caring for you because you're going through something that's not under your control. And like, the information you take in just going through your life has the ability to send you into these loops that are not good. That if the ground is fertile enough through chemistry, through fucking situation.
Right. Or feeling like his parents were dead, because of course he felt that way. He had just graduated high school and had probably never been away from his parents ever in his life.
Sure.
So when he's taken to this hospital and is in like this weird state and shocked and given these treatments,
he's got people caring for him that aren't his parents for the first time. Like, what? Yeah, of course.
Right.
Of course, that's the delusion.
So there's a lot of
from that.
Signals that are and crosswires that are being totally misfired, and you know, there's a lot of confusion going on. But he makes a recovery. But like I said, I think it's very interesting, this idea. It says the confusion of the boy grew worse, for here he was seeing with his eyes and trusting the message that they conveyed his body was intact. Yet at the same time, another sense modality rising from the depths and surface of his body would tell him the contrary. So it's like he's seeing with his eyes, I have a penis.
Right.
And yet with his brain, he's thinking, no, I don't. And the discrepancy between those is so like vast and oscillating so quickly that it's creating this completely distorted sense of reality that is very distressing for him.
Sure. Yeah.
Where he doesn't know if he's been mutilated or not, if he's missing his legs, if he still has a body, if he's alive, if he's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, that sounds like it sucks. It's a bad place to be.
And yet somehow he just gets better.
Well, they stopped fucking with him.
Yeah.
This is what happened.
And moving on.
God damn. They don't have any like follow-ups? Like, how's he doing like 5 years later?
No.
It's nice when you can conveniently end a story where you want.
Now I'd like to talk about case number 5. This case is distinguished by 2 interesting features. One is that it is characterized by ideas of references, hallucinations, and delusions of persecution, and silly behavior. The second feature is the time relation of the disease to a previous childbirth. The second feature unique to this case is that the time relation of the disease to a previous childbirth. The patient gave birth to a boy on September 20th, 1944, and she was first noted to be mentally ill on December 7th of the same year. So like I said, that postpartum thing. The comparatively short time between the delivery and subsequent mental disease.
What year is this?
1944.
Well, it's the anniversary of Pearl Harbor.
Haha. It was suggested that she was dealing with postpartum psychosis, but that diagnosis was rejected because of the assumedly clear-minded condition of the patient between the delivery and the first manifestation of the symptoms of her mental illness. So basically, she was like too self-aware to be psychotic.
I don't know about that.
I think it might start off that way sometimes, but it doesn't always end up that way.
I mean, me and you are pretty self-aware.
Yeah, and even then...
It gets funny sometimes.
It sure do. The patient is a 30-year-old woman who had 2 older children. The pregnancies and deliveries were uneventful except for some vaginal hemorrhaging following birth. Yeah, that's uneventful. Just some light fucking vaginal hemorrhaging.
It's a terrible set of words.
The patient's husband gave the following report. At the beginning of October, 1 month after an apparently normal delivery, the patient suddenly began to complain that she couldn't move around and was having backaches and remained in bed. Oh, that complainer, her.
Are you fucking kidding me?
At the time, the husband paid little attention to these complaints, although he now recalls that the same type of complaints had occurred a month or 2 after the patient's previous delivery. Oh, what are you saying? That pregnancy takes a toll on
this motherfucker needs a bullet to the head.
I know.
Jesus
Christ.
Christ.
No wonder she's fucking stressed out.
What?
Oh, I don't know why my wife's all of a sudden a useless cow. We have 3 kids and a newborn baby, and she's having backaches. What's going on, doctor?
What the fuck?
Yeah, at the end of November, the patient had a hemorrhage, about which the husband learned nothing for several weeks. You know, I bet he had blown her off so many times before about things that she was complaining about having to do with her health that she was like, whatever, I guess I'm bleeding and I'm...
Yeah, no, he
doesn't even care.
He's on this shit like,
yeah.
Oh, she doesn't know what it's like to really work a day in your life. Yeah. You know, a fucking douchebag.
He then left on a business trip.
Yeah.
And telephoned his wife 3 days later, but she refused to come to the phone. The same thing happened the next night. At the end of the week, the patient called her husband and painted a very rosy picture of the future and told him a long series of plans that she had made. Her talk was hypomanic. Okay.
No, she was blaming herself for the relationship going bad. And
yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Trying to ignore the reality and paint over it by saying, everything's fine. Yeah, right, we can do all of these things even though we have 3 kids and I feel like I'm in over
right, and she was feeling useless because she was feeling like shit.
Right.
And so she was putting that on herself and trying to like paint this rosy picture, thinking that if she was just better, he would love her more.
Please come home from your business trip. I got a newborn to take care of. On December 5th.
Give her the electrodes.
Yeah. Her husband returned and observed that his wife was behaving in a dreamy and childish way. There was an unnatural expression of happiness on her face. She smiled inappropriately, her manner of speech vacant. She seemed to be engrossed in her own thoughts. They went to a movie and saw a love story. During the performance, the patient seemed to be living in a dream world. At times, she would smile and then burst into tears without any apparent... She was moved by the movie she was watching.
She was moved by the movie and how it related to her own struggles with her relationship.
Like,
and it sounds like this dude's an asshole.
He just got home from a business trip. She's happy to see her husband and go on a date with him. And
This is the same stretch, right?
Yeah.
Where she calls him and she's like, she's blaming herself for all this shit. So she's painting this rosy picture because she's sensed distance from him too.
Mm-hmm.
They come back, they go on their first date from having their third fucking kid, and she's dealing with all these very real physical problems. What? And she's distant and like fakely happy. Yeah, she's depressed as fuck and faking it. Then you go to this movie that deals with, it's called A Love Story. Yeah, she's gonna start crying, dude. That's called being a fucking person.
Yeah.
You know?
She explained away her behavior, saying that she was afraid that someone might take advantage of her husband. Yeah, because he's going away for business trips. Meanwhile, she's popped out a kid and she's probably insecure about her body.
Absolutely.
Like, this is not delusional behavior.
Give her the electrodes.
Yeah.
No, that's this is literally not delusional behavior.
Oh, this is the craziest thing so far.
Insane.
That he's...
This is not a patient. This is a fucking
Bring her in.
person.
Guess what she did that night? She woke him up at 4 o'clock in the morning and tried to have intercourse with him.
Jesus fucking Christ.
That's when he telephoned to call the Institute. I'm not even kidding. No. I'm not kidding.
Oh my God.
This is tragic. This is why we need to talk about this book.
This is insane.
Yeah.
What?
She's just struggling after giving birth, dude.
That's what you do when a relationship is falling apart.
She's just trying to get a little nookie.
And you know why the relationship's falling apart? Because you're the type of guy to call the fucking hospital when she's trying to fuck you at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Oh my God. And then, okay, after he called the Institute and returned to his wife's bed,
why didn't you just fuck your wife?
You know what she was doing? She was crying.
Of course she was! I would be dead, anyone would be crying if you try to fuck your spouse at 4 a.m. and instead you get the mental hospital called on you. Yeah, that's crying material. That's real serious crying material.
Yeah.
What in the living fuck are we talking about here? What the fuck?
See, and now this is the point. This is,
this is why I'm afraid to show any emotion ever.
There is a term called, there is such a thing as reactive abuse, where an abuser pushes someone and pushes their buttons like so hard, and they're pushed to a breaking point where eventually they act crazy.
Oh, I've been through it.
And then that person has the privilege of going, see, aren't they crazy?
That is how a very long relationship of mine ended, and I lost a bunch of friends.
Fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it was fucking sick.
So she's
at least I didn't get the hospital called on me.
She's pushed to that point. He's called the hospital, and she's looking at her husband, and she hits herself in the face, and she says,
"Yeah,
I know your secrets."
Yeah, he's cheating on her on the business trips.
And she says, I can see everything now. I have the power to read your mind because my mind and your mind control our nerves. And then she becomes
well, now she's actually breaking because you called the fucking hospital on her.
Well, yeah. Now she's like, you're trying to get me locked up because I know the truth and you don't want me to I can see
that's a reasonable assumption.
Right.
Yeah. Honestly, it's probably true.
So during this whole time, she's sitting on her bed. She's crying. She's calling for help. She's saying that there's a force trying to overpower her. And during this time, she seems to be in contact with her environment. She recognizes the doctor, her husband, her home. But she's also... It's described that her expression is very dreamy. And that morning, she's admitted to the ward where she complains of confusion and a sense of unreality.
Yes!
She said things did not seem real anymore.
Of course they don't.
Of course they don't.
Of course they fucking
all of a
don't.
sudden, she's sitting in a hospital.
Where reality is entirely different. She just had her third kid, and all of a sudden she's in a fucking hospital because she tried to bang her husband at 4 a.m. because she was trying to put the spark back in their fucking marriage.
She was emotional, yeah.
She's in a new fucking universe, dude. That's a new reality, and there is an overpowering force.
She said...
That's real.
Everything looked so peculiar to her, and she couldn't understand the world anymore.
No shit.
She saw something in everything, something that wasn't there, something uncertain. Everything looked dreamy. The people on the streets, they were just going about dreaming about things that they were missing in their lives, she thought.
Okay, so she's having thoughts. too.
Yeah.
Also, that's it.
And she's projecting her own sense of uncertainty about her future. Like, what is the future of me as a mother? Like, I'm sitting in this hospital. How can I be a mother? How can I be a wife? Who am I now? What role do I play? Like,
and it's also fucking insane to do to a new mom and also your wife. Like, so obviously there's confusions about like how the world works and shit.
Yeah. So she gets there. She was disoriented about the events that had occurred for like the weeks leading up to her hospitalization, but she was still oriented in time and space. However, she was also, it says, very excited, would cry frequently and constantly pick at her fingers, moving her head about, glancing at everything with an anxious look.
Why is this not understood to just be a fucking person in the situation?
The second night the patient was in the hospital, she became belligerent. She fought everyone. During that night, she was so excited it became necessary to transfer her to the closed ward and give her large doses of sedatives that were unsuccessful. During this time, she felt that people were attempting to hypnotize her. This filled her with a feeling of unbearable dread. When an old friend of the family came and tried to calm her down, she told him he was a sex fiend and was trying to force her to have intercourse. She said that her children were dead and her husband had been killed. I mean, like, functionally, in her mind, she feels like her family is gone.
At
like,
this point,
doesn't have any role in it.
Look, listen, at this point, anybody, you can drive anyone crazy.
Yeah.
This situation at this point would drive anyone crazy.
Yeah, she's a broken person.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, too, is like, to me, when someone's in a psychotic state, it doesn't mean that like they're gone forever or that it's like irreparable. It just,
this person was never in a psychotic state.
It's an extreme state of stress.
Right. And but this case was never, I have not seen any evidence of psychosis until she's in a hospital and being forced into injections and shit against her fucking will.
Right. I don't know if she's been given any injections yet, but like she's stressed out. She's been forcibly institutionalized.
Sure.
Basically.
But
like her husband called the hospital.
Nothing at home was psychosis.
No.
At all.
She just tried to fuck her husband.
She was depressed and tried to fuck her husband. That's it.
Yeah. And he was like, there's something wrong with you.
You've been acting weird. Yeah, she has.
So on December 11th, electric shock treatment began.
God damn it.
After 2 treatments, the patient was somewhat calmer but still cloudy. After the 3rd treatment, her cloudiness seemed to clear. She did not mention, and when questioned, denied ideas of reference, but became unreasonable and belligerent. Male patients around the ward complained she was making sexual advances towards them. Yeah, dude, she's fucking, like, that was the whole thing.
Well, now
her
she's also
rejected her
out, too. And, like, why wouldn't you if you're put in this position?
Yeah, she just wanted some love. Like, she was just craving some love at the end of the day.
If I got, like, interned in a mental institution against my will and I knew I wasn't getting out and that it was a misunderstanding that was going to destroy me, the shit that would come out of my mouth, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's given her first shock treatment on December 11th. By December 20th, she's now spending most of her time, like, buried underneath blankets, like, telling everyone that she just has a headache. And this is when the silly behavior starts.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
She starts laughing uncontrollably out of nowhere, staying in her room all the time. When spoken to, she would just bury her head in her pillow or turn away. After her 10th treatment, the first signs of improvement appear. She's no longer making sexual advances towards the patients. But it's like, why is that an improvement? First of all, in Canada, they have people that are hired to fuck people with mental disabilities because even people with intellectual disabilities need to be fucked. So I'm sorry, is this woman really psychotic if she's just horny while in the psych ward? Is that a sign that she's doing better, or is she just more I don't know. Like, I'm sorry.
I gotta move to Canada.
I was gonna say I would take that job.
I wasn't looking for a job.
You're looking for a fuck.
For healthcare.
Okay. Yeah, but that's her sign of improvement, is that she's no longer like hypomanically sexual, I guess.
This is all so terrible, dude.
And no, it really is. 'Cause it's pathologizing like normal human behavior, and
Right.
it is abnormal because they're placed under extreme stress, but it's
Do not equivocate this shit.
Yeah.
Don't fall into that trap here. This is fucking insane.
Yes. So, yeah, after her 10th treatment, the silly laughter, it's still present, but it is less prominent. She's not falling into laughter fits anymore, which was not present before she was ever in the hospital, by the way. That began in the hospital. Around June, a peculiar change occurred in her. So this is going back in time, like before her hospitalization. This is while she was pregnant. It was as if her eyes were bad. She said everything appeared a little bit hazy and far away, and she thought at the time that it was her pregnancy affecting her eyes, so she went to an eye specialist, but they found nothing wrong with her. She became fearful and didn't tell anybody, but she thought that there was something wrong with her vision, that there was some disorientation in space that was happening to her. She also hardly remembered people that she met during that time, because it wasn't just her eyes and her vision that was hazy, but her mind and her recollection. It was like everything during that time and during her pregnancy was shrouded by this fog. So she gives birth in September, right? And she's continuing to keep this a secret. She doesn't want to tell anybody around her because she feels like something really bad is going to happen to her if she tells her family or friends that she's experiencing this shift.
Yeah.
She feels like... And like something bad does happen eventually, but maybe if she had said something sooner, it might not have. Who knows? But then again, we're also at a place in time and space that's not equipped to deal with mental health the way that we are now. So around the end of November, and this is leading up to her hospitalization, this is when nothing, and this is self-reported, nothing seems real to her anymore, and she was just like confused. She says that she began to see in other people's eyes a longing for things that she had missed in her childhood. Things like love and affection, attention and kindness. So she was like projecting these dreamlike fantasies onto other people. These people would appear to her like they were dreaming and they were in a dream together.
She should have started making art because that's that impulse.
Yes.
Right? Like,
absolutely.
What the fuck?
Like, turn that into songwriting. Turn that into collage.
We all have those impulses. We all have those thoughts and shit. You just make art with it. That's what you got to do.
But this is when, around the beginning of December, she starts to hear voices. And the voices are telling her about her husband and about the true nature of what her husband is up to when he's at work. And stuff... I wish it had more details, but it says the nature of her husband's research. I don't know what her husband's job was.
Right.
But...
Wait, this is the same case study, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we're just getting more self-reported background. Like, so the whole like love story thing, it makes sense why it so deeply affected her, because she's looking for, like she said, these things she missed in her childhood: love, affection, attention, kindness. She's searching for that within the faces of other people because her husband's not around. He's off on these business trips.
Dude, this is all so normal. Like, I mean, I don't hallucinate voices, but like I know people who do, and they're fucking normal as shit. It's fine.
Yes.
Like,
now she also says when she later came out of this, when she wouldn't let anybody see her face and was covering herself with blankets, she said it's because she felt like her eyes, she felt like her eyes had the power to show other people an aspect of herself that she didn't want them to see. It was too vulnerable.
oh, I understand that impulse.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, she thought that she was afraid
Yeah.
that if people looked her straight in the eyes, they could see things about her that she didn't want them to see and was too embarrassed of.
Yeah.
And that's totally reasonable. Like, she would rather them have the image of her under the blanket than to see her pained expression and to see the distant look in her eyes.
I often have a hard time with eye contact with people. And
especially if you're in pain.
And like, that's a good way of describing the feeling. You know, it's a vulnerability thing.
Yeah, it says...
I hate it because, like, I know I should look people in the eye because it seems shifty, but, like, it's hard sometimes.
Well, at least you're aware of it.
Too aware.
Yeah. The patient's recovery was uneventful and complete.
Oh, fuck you. I don't know why that makes me angry.
Yeah. Again, just a very unsatisfactory conclusion. It's like, well, I guess she just got better.
It makes me angry because there's no understanding of the person. There's no humanity there.
Right. It's like, well, I guess we just shocked her with stuff and then she magically got better. I guess we did a good job. But really, it doesn't seem like there's any care to actually fucking understanding, like...
that there's a person in there.
And to me, that's kind of what the Four of Cups represents, is like the scientific attitude towards... the cloud is right there behind you being like, here's the answer. You just gotta give them a little empathy.
Right.
You just gotta understand their lives a little bit, and then
it's like, no, I just need some fucking space. Like, like, let me think for a fucking minute.
Right. Like, she just needed to go to the psych ward a little bit. Like
maybe
things,
things aren't fucking groovy right now. And like, let me figure that out. Don't fucking take me to the psych ward at 4 a.m. for trying to fuck you, dude.
These are often people that need a break from their lives in order to find a way back to their lives.
Maybe their lives aren't great.
Yeah.
Maybe they got forced into a fucking marriage because, contraception wasn't necessarily what it is now, right? Maybe societal pressures made them make bad fucking choices. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe all these reasons they ended up in an unnatural situation and they're trying to figure out, why do I feel so fucking bad?
Right.
Hit him with the electrodes.
I know.
Fuck, dude.
And it is like, that's the thing. It's like, how do you treat a perceptual disease? Because what it is these people have pathological disillusionment with their life that is now presenting itself in a way that can no longer be ignored and has shattered their reality. So they have to end up in a hospital because they simply cannot exist in their lives the way that it has been going.
I mean,
it's just not working anymore.
Like, for example, like, you've seen my own struggles with depression and shit. And like, when I say that, like, a lot of times the only fucking way you can express that is through poetry.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Poetry, art, song.
You have to express it in this abstracted way. You can't, it's different than, I feel sad. It's so much different.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And when I hear these fucking stories, it's the pathologizing of that natural fucking, one of the primary ways in which we communicate. How we explain unexplainable things.
Right.
And that's that like fucking mid 20th century mechanization.
Yes.
It's what Norbert Wiener was terrified of when he published Cybernetics.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's that bad shit.
When I was going through my, nervous breakdown in November, I remember sitting outside of the emergency room in the parking lot and having a moment, like half an hour, sitting there with my partner talking about, do I go in or not? Because if I go in, I understand I'm going to be slapped with an irreversible diagnosis that probably isn't going to help me.
Yeah.
I don't know what I need, but I'm not sure it's a hospitalization. I'm glad we're here. It's an option, but let's think about this before we do it, because that's actually not what I needed. What I needed was to come home and to have some friends come over and be around me and take care of me for a few days. That's what I needed.
Yeah.
Like...
And that's what all these fucking people need.
Right. I needed to talk to other people that understood my experiences, had similar experiences, and had gotten through to the other side. And that gave me the context to understand what I was dealing with. The delusions that I had were very much related to aspects of my life that I wasn't dealing with. Thinking that, for example, like, oh, I'm going to be kidnapped. Well, that's an escape fantasy. That's because I want to get away from my life,
Or whatever. That's one way of interpreting it.
Right.
So I'm thinking about the Four of Cups right now. I don't know if this is if it's time for that.
It can be.
I'm thinking about, like, the Four of Cups is like, you've got this disembodied hand handing this dude a cup, and that cup can be seen as like a treatment, a drug or something, right?
Right. I didn't even bring up carbogen therapy. He also did carbon dioxide therapy, where he would give people near-death experiences in order to try to help them get better.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ.
When it's like, really, I think what these people might have needed is just some connection.
I mean, yeah,
art making.
That's what I'm getting at
talk
here.
To.
Yeah.
that got it.
That's what I'm getting to here, is like, this disembodied hand is handing this treatment to this person.
Yeah.
When in reality, that person just needs the person behind the hand to go sit with them for a bit.
Yeah.
That's it. Just like some understanding, like, hey, we're all in this together. Like, we all have weird thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
We're all dissatisfied. This shit feels weird to all of us. It always has. It's part of the human fucking condition. And like when you break down those boundaries of like authority or like the person in the role versus the subject scientist fucking subject doctor fucking relationship, you break that shit down and it's just like, hey, we're just stupid fucking monkeys.
Right.
Maybe we can sit next to each other and just talk about how, you know, how hard this shit is.
Absolutely.
Maybe that should be the first line fucking treatment.
Mm-hmm.
The fuck. And I guess it is now, but like, I don't know. All those mid 20th century medical stories just make me so fucking angry. I don't know.
And for good reason.
Yeah. It's like, I was going to say unreasonably angry, but it's not unreasonable at all. It's really horrifying.
And if we had more time, I would have gone into more case studies, but I'm sure that like, if you're interested in this, you can source it and they are very interesting to read.
Yeah. I personally have a hard time reading them.
Mm-hmm.
They just start, the vein in my forehead starts popping out and shit. I feel a deep empathy when I hear stories about people.
Likewise,
you know?
That's what draws me to it.
Yeah.
It's because I know what that feels like, to feel like...
You're less of a coward than I am, so you
know,
you can
is this a dream? Is this real life? Well, sometimes the boundaries get blurred a little bit, and that gets really scary. So
yeah,
it's interesting to me to learn about like what's done with that.
I've gone through periods where, you know, you just get like hit with like a synchronicity shitstorm, and I'm pretty good at dealing with that shit. Mm-hmm. But like, I understand that. I just kind of let it roll off my fucking skin.
That's the good way to be.
Yeah, like I've got other concerns, you know. And so I do, like, I often feel like, I don't know if this is a dream.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going on here. This is all weird as shit.
If it is, you have a role in creating it.
Or whatever. I don't know. I'm just here.
Right?
Like, this is just what's happening. Right?
Yeah.
I don't, so, but like, I have a lot of weird thoughts about like what's going on. I don't know. You just roll with it. And I have friends who support me. Right? And like, I know I'm not alone.
And you have to imagine in the 1950s and the 1940s, you start experiencing this weird shit. Everything gets all wavy. And you didn't even do any drugs to get there. Who do you have to talk about that with?
Well, so
it's very alienating.
So that's the dark side of that, like Norbert Wiener cybernetics shit. The positive side is that, and I do believe it's a direct outgrowth of the same forces that led to like these case studies and electroconvulsive therapy, is that friend groups and friends are more comfortable talking about their minds now.
Yes.
More comfortable being vulnerable about the way they think. That's the light side of the same exact thing.
Right. The light side is that it's shown me that we have come a long way in terms of the support networks that we have to talk about these things.
Yeah.
And to understand these states of mind.
And I think it would be a mistake to think that like, you know, earlier centuries and shit were any better at dealing with that shit.
Or even that we've perfected it now, because we certainly haven't. We're still a long way from understanding how the mind works.
Right. Although
what breaks a mind.
I do think there may be a chance that a more strictly poetic treatment, I guess, framework for understanding things, I think that's likely more beneficial than the mid 20th century psychiatry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, I think we did do shit better before the 20th century than we did in this slice there.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about recognizing the validity of that mythopoetic method of treatment, religious method of treatment, perhaps.
Right.
It has fucking value because you shouldn't fucking just think of people as machines.
Or as test subjects.
As strictly behaviorist fucking agents.
Right.
Like, we do have to cover behaviorism and fucking what's his ass?
Oh, we sure do.
Yeah, what's his fucking ass? Behavior of organisms. B.F. Skinner.
That's the one.
We got to cover B.F. Skinner.
Well, folks, if you like what we do have a Patreon.
We do.
You'll get access to our bonus show.
Do they get electroshocks if they join or if they don't?
Depends which one you like more.
Yeah, actually, you know what? It's up to you if you join. Yeah, we do have a bonus series called The Corkboard Bazaar. I have an episode this week. And
yes, this week we will be talking about...
What are we doing?
A man who was subjected to mind control programming through Disneyland and
fuck yeah,
Mormonism and
oh no,
yeah. Well, we're gonna explore his website,
dude. Mormon shit. We've never really gone into.
Oh,
Mormon
it's
shit.
dark. I don't even wanna. But his website is too juicy to ignore, so we're gonna be looking at that on our bonus series.
Is Mormonism Freemasonry for children.
Yes.
I think so. I think it is. Great sci-fi, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We also have a Discord server. We're always hanging out in there, having conversations, doing experiments. Get access to that and the Corkboard Bazaar starting at just $5 a month at patreon.com/thenonsensebazaar. Do you know how many weeks in a row I've said this is the week I'm going to bring in the Patreon list for shoutouts?
Yeah,
it's folks, it's literally not a bit.
It'll happen.
We're that stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Take care, guys.
Peace.